Alright, so I've been thinking about it for a while, and I know the controversies behind it, and I know a lot of people don't like the idea of it when they really look at everything and they try to, analyze everything under a scope. I completely understand it. I do it with a lot of things. I watch a lot of the media, a lot of the games. That's why, I was once a huge Destiny fan. Still am, but unfortunately it's taken a turn for the worst, and I just can't stand all the little issues with it anymore. So I completely understand why the controversial topic of 6 million clones is so hotly debated. Or I guess rather than debated, a lot of people just don't like it. Now, I'm going to argue in defense of it. Now, am I saying that 6 million clones is the best way to explain why there's only 6 million clones, or why my reasoning for why there is 6 million clones is the only reason, and or makes the clones make so much sense that it fixes everything, blah blah blah? No, I'm just saying that there is technically a way you can make 6 million clones work, and I'm basically going to present why I think 6 million clones could work. And starting off with, also completely subjective, this is all opinion, you don't have to like it, it's just kind of a theory. But starting off with the idea of 6 million clones were made by technically Palpatine himself, but if you want to do the, trailing back, you have Sifo Dyas, who was ordered by Count Dooku, who was no doubt ordered by Palpatine to contact the Kaminoans and get 6 million clones made. Now, the reason why I think it was 6 million and not something like 6 billion, even though, planets hold billions of species, but we only get 6 million clones, it seems a little disproportionate. However, what I will say, in defense of the 6 million clones, it's quite possible that was the amount they could have maximized in terms of the war efforts. Now, what I mean by that is perhaps the Kaminoans aren't able to produce a massive war on the scale of billions of clones, and they were only able to make 6 million. As in the second movie here, called Attack of the Clones, we get to hear that there are a certain amount finished and a certain amount on the way, and there's already 6 million ready for deployment, basically. To me, that means they're working on them constantly, and because the Clone Wars doesn't really last that long, I believe only a few years, I believe it's 3, I could be wrong on that, I might double check it, but basically, if the war only lasts a few years, you most likely don't need billions and billions in terms of Palpatine's overall plan. And we gotta remember, Palpatine's kind of pulling both strings here. He's pulling the strings in terms of the good guy side and the bad guy side. If he does 6 million clones, perhaps it was cost efficient and he might not have enough money to just make billions and billions of clones in terms of paying off the Kaminoans. Now, on top of that, there's also the question of the droids that are being made. Now, it is pretty much confirmed that Palpatine originally made the droids, and they were kind of dumbed down versions of droids, not crazy ones like the commando droids, otherwise they would just mass produce commando droids. Most of them were just B1 battle droids or B2 battle droids, however you want to call them, but they were at the end of the day just battle droids, a little goofy, a little not that sentient, a little not smart when there's no leadership. Now, the reason could also be because of a funds issue. Now, I know that's kind of a cop-out, but I do think it kind of explains a lot. In a galaxy we're talking about here, imagining someone's the president of Earth going in against Martians, the president of Earth isn't going to be able to just contact the aliens on Uranus and, just start cloning a bunch of different races, or, sorry, cloning themselves a billion times without exchanging resources. It's quite possible Palpatine just doesn't have the resources to exchange comfortably the large-scale amount of clones and the large-scale amount of B1 battle droids, and it's also quite possible that he left 6 million clones so that he would only have to make a certain amount of battle droids. The reason why they might not be making more clones is because they might see the clones as an unethical sort of way of life, and it could be something hotly debated in the council room of the Jedi, or it could be even debated amongst all the Senate they might be hotly debating the topic of cloning and the mass producing of cloning. Maybe it's something where they limit it to a certain extent, and 6 million just might be the limit there. Now, of course, these are band-aid fixes. These are all, like, Star Wars didn't do this. I'm kind of just filling in holes that are there. However, I do think it's fairly reasonable to have a low amount of army. Maybe not 6 million, I would have liked to see more, but I also think it kind of, in a way, makes sense. Maybe the large scale was kind of off when they were developing the clones. However, I do believe that there are ways to explain the 6 million clones. Also, it said that one clone is equal to 100 battle droids, and if that's the comparison here, it kind of makes sense why the battle droids were maybe in excess, because they were so dumbed down. And if one clone truly can handle 100 battle droids, they might not need the making of more than 6 million clones, because we need to not forget that there was also the number of 10,000 Jedi thrown out there. Now, if there's 10,000 Jedis, it's said that a Jedi is strong enough to defeat at least 1,000 battle droids, as said by one of those flying bugs in one of the early episodes, I believe episode 1 of the Clone Wars. Now, if that's the case, it does really make sense why there's such a low number of clones. It could just be that the Jedi think of themselves as much more powerful than just having a large-scale number of clones. Could also, with the chip involvement, been an issue of the number of chips handed out to clones. Going over the 6 million could also provoke a higher deterioration rate amongst the issues with the chips, hence why we see fives kind of randomly turn on a Jedi during one of the episodes in the Clone Wars. Sick moment, but that could be a big issue if they did end up doing something like 6 billion clones, because if they did 6 billion clones, you would no doubt get much more cases of fives, and because there's not something like 6 billion Jedi, the Jedi would most likely be making notes of constant Jedi being under fire by their own troops, and that would lead to the clones being decommissioned much, much faster than they were after the Jedi's slaughtering after Order 66. Now, again, this kind of also is a band-aid fix, but it's just kind of a suggestion. I do think 6 million clones could work, or at least a low number of clones, because they could have developed more. We also see genetic defects amongst the 99s, amongst the Bad Batch. Like, there's a few cases here where the Kaminoans do produce, like, disformities, and they kind of just want to get rid of them, you know? And that might be the case when you try to genetically copy something over 6 million times, because realistically, in Star Wars, we haven't really seen anything to this level, or I haven't seen anything to this level. There might be a comic somewhere that I may have missed, but I have not seen anything to suggest that cloning can be done more than 6 million times. Even in the case of Palpatine, as the unfortunate reality we have to face as Star Wars fans, where he's just a clone. At the end of the day, he didn't make 6 million of Palpatines, he made very few. You know, and that could be a tribute to a lot of things, resources. It could be a tribute to the deformity, the defects, you know. There's a lot of things that might go into the cloning thing. I do think a lot of people blow the 6 million clones out of proportion. Well, I do think it is kind of a slight issue, considering there are billions and trillions on a individual planet. And at some point in the Star Wars universe, we do get to the point where we're destroying planets. I just overall think a lot of people blow it out of proportion. I think it is kind of odd, but at the end of the day, it's just 6 million clones. We get the Clone Wars out of it, and the Clone Wars only lasts a couple of years. Outside of that, we do get small storylines like Commander Cody being outside of the clone, or the Imperial Army, when he's older in age, as we see in Obi-Wan. And then we also get to see many other clones like Rex in his old age and stuff like that, so we get to see nice wholesome moments with the clones. Am I saying it's perfect? No. Am I saying that they could have done better? Yes. But I kind of just want to present some easy, quick theories, band-aid fixes if you will, to explaining why 6 million clones is explainable. Kind of just wanted to do this for fun, put that out there, and yeah, maybe sort of sway the minds of 6 million clones being, you know, pretty bad, because I can understand why a lot of people dislike it, but I can also understand, you know, it's just not that big of a deal when we're looking at Star Wars as a whole. As the Clone Wars, obviously it's a big deal, but Star Wars as a whole, clones being such in a small number, I feel like is kind of a minor issue. But with all that being said, I want to thank you for watching, and as always, I hope you have a good day.